This is Merchandise Mart. Transfer to Brown Line trains at Merchandise Mart. Doors closing.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, so welcome to the Wyzendale Weekly Wrap-Up. I'm Felix, joined with two guests today. Go ahead and introduce yourself, ladies.
I'm Jamie Haynes.
I'm Eve Fineman.
Nice. So thank you for coming on. So I met you, Jamie, at the Chicago Textile Week event, and then shortly before that, Eve started at the firm that we both work at, but we don't have to talk about work, obviously. So how do you guys know each other as well?
Well, we knew each other before we knew each other. We went to the same college, but Jamie is significantly younger than me. So
A little.
We both migrated to Chicago after college and had a lot of mutual friends. So we met when Jamie was working at Hi-Fi Record Shop with
Nice.
some mutual friends.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You remember that place?
No, where was that at?
Clark and Wrightwood, thereabouts, like nearby Gramaphone, back when that was kind of a record collecting
Yes.
alley.
Yes.
So a friend of ours owned Hi-Fi Records,
Okay.
and Jamie worked there, and I was a regular.
Very cool.
So,
So
but
do you
I
guys-
was
do you
friends
guys-
with some other people that worked
Do you
there.
still collect records, both of you?
I do. I primarily DJ on vinyl still.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So
I've
you're-
been in the process of paring down my collection for 20 years, but I still have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jamie, you're a 1200 queen then? Do you do techniques or
I
what do
do
you?
have
What do you? Yeah.
a pair of techniques. Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
So it's all strictly vinyl, or do you?
This year I moved into digital just because there's certain gigs now that don't even offer the option of turntables, and certainly, when it's downtown, like the idea of bringing vinyl is a little daunting, but
Yeah,
it's still my
definitely carrying all of
first,
it.
my first love, and still what I do primarily, and,
Yeah.
and at my favorite gigs for sure.
Nice. Favorite record then? How about that?
Oh, God.
I know it's tough.
I'm terrible at those kinds of questions.
Yeah, I am
I know
too.
it's tough.
Don't put us on the spot, man.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so then you guys have a working relationship as far as like collaboration, and have you guys collaborated on multiple things?
So we have, primarily, I guess, in a curatorial way. Curating is one of my things that I do. I feel like
Curating in what sense? Like,
curating exhibitions.
oh, okay.
The actual definition of curation,
Yeah.
as opposed to the
Oh, right.
Instagram
Right.
version.
I'm not
Correct.
curating my friends or my
Playlist,
No.
curating playlist.
No.
Yeah.
Yes. Also,
Sorry,
when
I
people
couldn't help
say like they're architecting, that's one of
Oh,
my
I didn't know
pet
that was a
peeves.
verb.
It's
Okay.
a thing.
Is
Yeah,
it
a
a
lot of
verb?
people
Yeah.
outside of the design world like to say he was the architect of this bill.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah,
no, he wrote it.
Right.
Yeah, you just think it sounds cooler to say you architected it.
Yeah.
It's also not a verb.
So you curate shows as
I
far
do.
as what kind of shows?
Mostly design shows. I've curated kind of interdisciplinary furniture and interiors shows, and then also for the League of Women Designers, I curated a show that was at Jamie's space. So we
the
worked
space I
together
share
on
with
that.
Jerry Quinton,
Right.
Department of Curiosities.
Right. So I'm interested in presenting work in a less traditional way, so it's not just like an object on a pedestal, another object on a pedestal, but more in terms of maybe looking at how the work interacts with each other, how it informs each other, or how it might be more of a kind of spatial display of work.
Okay.
So imagining how the pieces would be with each other as opposed to just that's an object.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of, we're in the Hayworth showroom. Sorry, really quick. We're in the Hayworth showroom on 3rd floor. We're in the sitting in Capellini collection right now. Beautiful work. I know the space is definitely more of like a show space. Obviously, I know it's a showroom. I don't know what I'm saying. But so when you curate things, is it more of both on the wall and on the ground as well?
definitely, I like
Yeah.
to take a lot of stuff off the wall.
Okay.
And if there's presentations of two-dimensional work, it might be suspended or attached to something. So I try to kind of pull away from the perimeter and activate the space and encourage people to kind of meander through, as opposed to that sort of perimeter look and move type of experience.
Yeah.
So, and I think because of that, then you have a better opportunity to see something in the context of another piece that you wouldn't otherwise. If like that painting were across the room from this photograph, they won't inform each other.
Yeah.
But if it's a more spatial configuration, then this piece might be seen against this painting from one vantage point, but then from another it might be with Jamie's fashion piece, and then you can see start to make connections you wouldn't otherwise make. So I'm interested in those connections and having kind of people experiencing the exhibition in a multifaceted way like that. Yeah.
And then Jamie, how long have you had that store, or where's your store at? So for people
so it's at 3013 West Armitage Avenue, which is just west of Sacramento, Humboldt, in the Logan Square Humboldt Park neighborhood.
It's over by Scofflaw, over there. Yeah,
just a block down from there, kind of kitty corner from Parsons. And we've been there for over 5 years. We weren't really open to the public at the beginning. It took about a year. And even now it's mostly by appointment or by chance. So it's not a traditional retail space. It's more of a showroom. And then we make all the work that you see in that showroom in the back. So it's also a production space.
Well, how many pieces do you guys produce, would you say, a year? I mean, talk to me about slow fashion. I know it's a word and that people use, but for people who aren't familiar with that term, what is that?
Yes. So the slow fashion movement was really inspired by the slow food movement, and as slow food was really a movement that started in contrast to fast food, and really about kind of like slowing down, appreciating artisanal practices, organic farming, the rights of the people on the farm working, as well as that experience of like just sitting down and enjoying your food. Slow fashion is very similar. So, we saw the rise of fast fashion in the last generation or so, kind of from the late 90s onward, and that kind of really eroding the fashion system, and also taking clothing from something that people treated as very precious because of its cost, but also from the amount of effort that went into it, and kind of being divorced from that process and then treating clothing as disposable. So this is just trying to reclaim that process of really getting into the textiles and the processes that are used to make the garment, but also treating it more as an heirloom object that you will fix if it breaks, and then also hopefully pass on or reuse, remake into something else.
Nice.
I think also there's the element, because I own a couple of pieces that both Jamie and Jerry's line also, and I can attest as a user to the experience of wearing something where the people who designed it and made it.
Sure.
And it has so much more meaning in that way. And then I get to say, I'm wearing the robe this morning and it feels so luxurious. And like giving that kind of feedback feels really meaningful to me. Like, because then there's more of a dialogue that gives us a little more life to the garment than just this thing that you bought that might be nice, but then it has no other layers beyond that.
Like it's not a mass market commodity. It's a bit akin to like shopping at the farmer's market, and you can't always buy the $4 tomato,
right?
But you do enjoy it in a different way, and also you can hold those people more accountable in terms of transparency and labor and environmental standards, which is super important in fashion. It's like the second biggest polluting industry in the world. So these issues are really important. They're not just kind of like check that greenwash box off.
And what I know you moderated a panel, Eve, for the Textile Week. Where I was unavailable to make it that night. But what were you guys talking about during that event? Do you remember?
Well, I was interviewing or sort of moderating Jerry and Jamie.
Does Jerry have the intimate is that the intimate one?
She does corsetry.
Right. So she does a line of
stuff.
corsetry, which is called Marua.
Okay.
And then together we design the Department of Curiosities line, which is also the name of the shop. And that's lingerie and nightwear. And then I also have my own line called Production Mode. So there's a lot going on in that space.
Sounds
and
like it.
Don't expect everybody to keep it straight. I can barely keep it straight.
So that panel and why we intersected was because it was for Chicago Textile Week, and textiles are a huge component of interior design, furniture design, and also fashion. So we know we have a lot of overlap, but it was fun to kind of focus in on that as a specific overlap. And I've enjoyed their lines specifically because they design their own textiles, they work with other artists, they are experimental with their processes, which is always interesting to me. Inventing new processes, like the jacket Jamie's wearing, that's screen print on leather, designed by a mutual friend of ours. And so all of those layers of sort of process and personal interaction just makes all of this stuff so much more interesting. And also just the idea of like inventing a process, I think we're both really interested in, like, okay, this is how it's done. So Jamie and I both, I think, tend to think that I'm going to go over here to start, because I'm not interested in just, jumping on that track. I'm more interested in like why Jamie and Jerry and I all question, why does that track exist, and can I jump off the track, and what will happen if I do something different? I think it's
kind of it's definitely more of a niche, I would say. I don't know how many stores do the slow fashion. I know there's quite a few stores that do the slow fashion, but I'm sure it's a smaller market of customer that everybody's really trying to have purchase their pieces. So is it more of the traditional like fashion show, or how do you guys promote that?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, we've really had to subvert that system too. Sometimes because we want to subvert things like Eve was just talking about, like why do what everybody else is doing, and also sometimes just out of geographical constraints and financial constraints. But we always try to use those in ways like, okay, so we're in Chicago, where Chicago's not known as a fashion capital, but yet you had designers coming out of Antwerp in the 90s and doing amazing things, and nobody was putting Antwerp on the map before them. So how do we use this to our advantage? So instead of a traditional fashion show, I've done a few of those, but I do those if there's sponsorship. So I've done one through the Wit Hotel, the Arts Club. I'm doing one for the Friday Club soon, which is a private women's club. That'll be next Friday.
And what about the one you did in Marshall Space?
Well, so that's...
I got the model.
Exactly.
Nice.
That was another collaboration with Eve that was really so fun. And so what I try to do is not work with traditional models, and also not work in traditional spaces, not have that same old tired like 90s house music soundtrack. I think
I like house music though.
I like house music too, but that like how many times have you seen that fashion show? It's corny as hell.
I just wanted to clarify.
I can't hate on house music in Chicago. Like, I'm not an idiot.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. Are we talking Green Velvet?
Right,
or are we talking like
sushi
restaurant house music? That's what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
Like
understood.
Bland wash.
Yeah.
It's a whole genre.
Yeah. So changing the mixing it up from the traditional.
I also did a show for my most recent collection. I debuted it at the Hyde Park Art Center, and then I worked with dancers. So I had a choreographer named Martine Whitehead choreograph it. She brought a few professional dancers in, but also worked with real people like myself and gave us super simple choreography. So it became this performance piece. So you were seeing things on all different body types, different ages, just as much diversity as possible in a way that also your runway models just don't have. Like that's a specific body type and age range.
Just for a second to jump in, I feel like as an audience member to see that, it's much easier to imagine yourself in a garment when you see a normal looking shaped body in the garment. And sometimes when you see traditional fashion shows and you see traditional models, it's like, yes, those look amazing, and I need another foot on me in order to have that draped that way. And so it's a barrier. So I think you have broken down that barrier in many ways by allowing us to relate to the people who are wearing your garments.
Definitely trying to, and certainly I think that's where the avant-garde in fashion is right now, is really questioning social structures, class structures, gender, sexuality, age, size, and you're starting to see kind of the most cutting edge designers do that. So it's nice to have, already been part of that conversation for a while now, in a way that I feel like the bigger houses are just starting to be like, oh, I guess we have to check that box, or oh, it could be cool to check that box. That's actually interesting. Wow,
Yeah, so we can get away from like the plus size model as being the only alternative.
Yeah.
Right,
Right,
yeah.
because that was a bit of an eye roller in my opinion.
No, are there different challenges, or not challenges, but are there different ways to design for quote unquote normal bodies? Like, is it different? It might be different. Like, you may be able to add something that you may not do with a traditional garment.
Oh, yes, and I love to talk about this, so you got to stop me if I go on
no,
too
that's
long.
that's why we're here.
It's a
Okay,
podcast.
because in art school, what you get a block or a sloper, and that is 2 models' measurements, and then they hire models who have those measurements, and if they don't come into spec, then those models are sent away and you get new models. So you learn very little about fitting, or about different body types, and then you get into the marketplace, and of course models are not your clients. They get free clothing, and also they actually don't have that much money, so they're not buying high-end clothing, and they look great in everything, so they don't really have to spend a ton of money to get something exactly to their measurements or what have you. So I really learned on the job, and now I teach at School of the Art Institute in continuing studies, and the people who are coming in to learn there want to learn how to fit themselves or their friends. They're not trying to do fashion lines for the most part. So I've really had to not only learn how to fit, but also how am I going to teach this to people? And now I say I know I've really kind of hit the ball out of the park with the design when it looks good on various body types. If it looks good on the model, I'm not actually that good of a designer, because I've seen stuff also from designing in classes and where you can put garments that aren't even really constructed well or designed well or following kind of the rules or breaking the rules consciously on a model. And if the model knows how to work clothing in her body, then they're going to look great. So it's really not a good test. So I really enjoy that challenge of fitting different body types. And it's also, the beauty of humanity, and especially women's bodies, is that amount of variation that we have. Yeah. It's really hard to make generalizations about us and to figure out sizing off the rack. So there's this whole political dimension as well to sizing and made to measure. I find when people actually get a garment that's made to their body, they feel so comfortable in their own skin and in that second skin that is clothing. So people always come in and announce to me all the things that they think are wrong to their body. My shoulders are too big, my legs are too short, my middle is too thick,
hips are too wide,
etc. Yeah, I'm sure you hear us have this dialogue all the time. That's been, and I think a lot of it has to do with ready-to-wear clothing, because you have this idea of what the standard is. But honestly, I've never had anybody, even models, walk into the studio and say, oh yes, I fit everything perfectly. Sure. I'm exactly the standard woman.
There
is
no
no
such
such
thing. I'm just having a conversation the other day about the norms and standards, and I just decided 2 days ago that I reject that they exist anywhere for anything.
Yeah,
I know they don't exist for women's body, but
misery is all they do.
Yes.
And it's an ideal that doesn't exist.
And I think it comes from mass manufacturing. Before that, I don't think you would have known what your shoulders were in proportion to everybody else's, or even if you noticed that, you wouldn't care. But now we have this idea of like, genetically,
but I just mean even
screwed.
like in life.
Yeah.
I think what percentage, I don't know, of misery happens because people, I know I have another thing that I say where when people are like, 72% of all, and I'm like, did you run the numbers? Did you plot the graph? So I'm not going to say a percentage, but the point is how much of our suffering comes from the fact that we don't attain or achieve the thing that we think we're supposed to, based on an idea of a person or a size or
like comparisons,
a way of operating that doesn't actually exist. So if we could just take down that whole structure and just own whatever it is, our body shape, the way our mind works. Even that idea of like, oh, they're on the spectrum, or they're, they have a, whatever kind of disability.
Or what kind of gender are you?
The disability is still based off of this perceived norm, and if we could just chuck the norm in the garbage, then everyone's just a person. And then what's the problem?
For people who are like coming out with lines, isn't the medium like the typical standard size that people try to design to? Is that Is that what's standard, I guess you could say?
Yes, when you are designing a line, your fit model is supposed to be the medium of your line, or like a size 8 if you're a 0 to 14 range. But of course, what does that mean? Because and so people get very frustrated and they say, why don't they standardize sizing? And the answer is you can't, because there is no standard. And then also it depends on what market are you going for. So obviously if you are, maybe it's not obvious, but I'll explain it. If you're a Gucci, you're selling to a very different market than Target. So Target is trying to be all things to all people, and it's obviously it's a cheaper price point. Gucci's very exclusive, so the size range will be smaller and tighter, and assume that everyone's doing a lot of Pilates. Okay. Yeah. Target is just like stretchy, and then just put a belt on with it, and that's you're good to go. Lots of spaces between the sizes too.
And I think time is something that is a luxury as well, right? When you're designing a line, do you really have time to make pieces that will fit all different body types? Or if you're trying to get out an idea or trying to get out a concept, I mean, is that where the standard kind of comes into play? Because you're trying to get out 10 pieces, and why not just do the 10 pieces at the medium size? I don't know. That's a question, I guess.
I think I know what you're asking, but we'll find out when I answer.
Okay.
So I think basically we start with our base size, which should be a medium of whatever your line is and whatever demographic you're going for. So that's going to look different in Japan than in California, because the body types are generally different, though obviously we have such a diverse society here. There's, again, no way you're going to fit everybody, and that's even true in Japan, where the society is less diverse. But then you do what's called grading, is to change the sizes up and down, and we do that through a system that we've developed in the design practice that's not perfect, but you assume that someone's neck only grows a little bit as they get taller and bigger, but their hips may grow more. But of course, you could have somebody who's 5 foot tall and a size 12, and somebody who's 6 feet tall and a size 12, and those body types are going to look very different. So nothing is going to be perfect, but you try your best. And the way that we've dealt with trying to fit multiple and different body types is just going made to measure. But at least there's something on the rack that you can look at or try on, and then you can make a muslin, which is a plain weave cotton fabric that's very cheap. That's sort of like your rough draft. Put the person in that, draw on it, and try to visualize and dream together to get something that's perfect for them.
Where do you get your textiles now?
So most of them we try to develop ourselves.
Nice.
So the leather, that I'm wearing today is actually from Horween Tannery here in Chicago. It's the last tannery left in Chicago. It's a unionized shop, which is really important to me because I have a labor organizing background. It's vegetable tan.
What was the name of it again?
Horween.
Horween?
Horween.
Aren't they the official supplier for the NFL footballs?
Yes.
Really?
I know you're a big football fan.
I am.
Are you
If
really?
you want to talk about that.
Don't get excited.
Say what?
That's soccer in Europe.
So they make leather for the footballs?
Yeah, and they have this special sauce that makes it just the right amount of sticky. So you can't change it up and give it to a different tannery, or they would have a different tannage and it would be a different kind of sticky. So you have to regulate the stickiness of this is what I've learned in visiting the tannery. It's been in the same family since it started in, I think, 1905, thereabouts. So it's amazing to be able to kind of see my suppliers and have that transparency. Vegetable tan leather is what I buy, which is also it's free of chrome, which is most leather now is chrome tan, which is a carcinogen. And then they also work on a closed loop cycle with their water. They have a water filtration system on site, so that's really great because tanning leather is super water intensive. So the more you can, they're not wasting any water.
Yeah. I'm assuming they're in the suburbs somewhere.
No, Armitage
Really?
and Elston.
Armitage and Elston?
Haven't you ever smelled it driving by?
Maybe.
Like Clybourne, the river is sort of near where the new Lincoln Yards development is happening.
Armitage and Elston.
Yeah, you can smell it. It's not pleasant, but
Interesting.
why should it be?
It
Right.
is flesh being tanned. Yeah.
So
there's
a
that.
little bit more on the Ladies Design League. What was it called? Sorry, what was the name of it?
Ladies'
Women
restroom?
making stuff.
Gals making shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not mocking it. I
GMS.
didn't know exactly what you said, so don't want you to think I'm mocking it.
Females creating stuff. I'm
Right.
just going to keep coming up with
Right,
random.
right.
The League of Women Designers.
League of Women Designers.
We call it
thank you.
LAUD for short.
Okay.
That is recently a nonprofit, but it's a group that's been around for, I don't know, 8 10 years or something. It was founded by a fabulous woman named Carrie Merkel, who's a furniture designer and fabricator.
And should be on this podcast.
She is...
She's
amazing, but she lives in Portland now. So
Okay.
she was living in Portland, and she developed her line of furniture called Merkled. I'll just plug it because I just love so much that she turned her last name into a past tense verb. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
That's great.
Yeah, she's also amazing. So she...
so this is a national organization. All right.
Well, League of Women Designers has, I think, 3 or 4 chapters at this point. So it's parent chapters in Portland. There's a Chicago chapter, a Denver chapter, a New York chapter, and I think there's something starting in California.
Oh, great.
It's completely grassroots. So Carrie was living in Chicago for a few years, and I met her then through the furniture design community, because that's one of the things that I do. Mm-hmm. When I was curating a show, actually, and I always try and find women who are designers to include in my exhibitions. And so I was introduced to her and a few other people. And after the show, she asked if I wanted to be part of this group. At the time, it was called the League of Awesome Women Designers, LAWD. But we grew up a little, and we dropped the A because we know we're awesome, and it's fine. But we don't have to say that anymore.
Right.
And LWD can still be pronounced laud, which is like praise, so that's kind of cool too. And it was really small and low key. It was like 10 of us at somebody's kitchen table. But what we would do is monthly studio visits. I held a pacha-kacha.
Nice.
I teach at Columbia College, and so...
what class do you teach there?
I teach in the interior architecture department.
Okay.
Right now, a design detail studio,
Nice.
but I have taught a whole bunch of different things.
I just heard today that the government's going to refund all student loans for like the Art Institute or something from 2018.
It's the Illinois Institute of Art, I used to teach there.
Yes.
And that is a whole separate topic.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that.
Yes. No, I won't. Well, my school doesn't exist anymore.
I taught there for 12 years, so
yeah.
we can take that one offline.
Okay. Off the record.
But so law then kind of started to grow. I pulled Jamie in at that point, and then she and I became the programmers for a few years, where we just seemed to have a good synergy in terms of putting on events. We both have an interest in it, and I would say have, between the two of us, a pretty far reach in terms of who we know. And I had access to a lot of different types of spaces, and then Jamie has this amazing space, so we have, through the years, then put on a lot of interesting programming for Laud.
So is it an application process, or
there's nothing? It's just word of mouth.
Okay.
We wanted it to be organic, and it's also member led. So the whole idea is, if you join Laud, then you can also program something or run an event or create a panel, or
and then use the network that's within Laud as a resource for.
And I can speak to the benefits of the networking, and I think because it's grassroots and member led, actually it's less like people are there thinking, what can I get out of this? And instead, it's a very kind of community-focused organization, and so people want to help each other, which I would say has something to do with the fact that it's a group of women. I've gotten so many things out of it: jobs, shows, clients, exhibitions, and not because I was trying to push my own agenda forward, but because there's this really generous spirit to the organization that people really help each other a lot. I've also, helped a lot of people out in the organization in similar ways. And like I said, I curate shows, so that's a huge thing for me to tap into. And so it's an interdisciplinary design organization, and I think that's the key and the thing that has made us all stay with it and are so interested in it, because we've all been part of professional organizations that are tailored to our own industries. Like, I'm not going to plug any of them for my industry, but there are many.
Yeah,
and
imagine.
After several decades of attending events where it's just a bunch of you, it got a little bit stale for many of us who are established in our careers, but it was super interesting to learn about how fashion designers' processes and businesses worked, or a jewelry designer, or a graphic designer, or web designer, textile design, and we all found a lot of commonalities, but also just were really interested in learning about each other's projects. So I think that, to me, it's that interdisciplinary component that keeps me really interested in this organization more than any professional organizations I've ever been a part of.
Do you guys have any events coming up or shows that we could be
Do
aware
we?
of?
Well,
I don't know if we can talk about them or not. But
I have something cooking that I can't talk about.
Okay.
But yes, my agenda is to let people in Chicago and beyond see the incredible talents of women designers in Chicago, because they are really amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, super high level, really like pushing boundaries, but also at the same time, incredibly high level of craft, knowledge, business knowledge. I mean, we've definitely helped each other in terms of business development, and so part of my sort of agenda moving forward is to get some of these people to show outside of Chicago.
Yeah.
Because I think Chicago's a very design-focused city, and there's a lot happening here, but I do find that people don't realize how much incredible talent exists in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so I have a little bit of a agenda to get some of our work beyond Chicago.
Right,
out.
Right. Yeah. What shows you guys like to visit throughout the year? Like, whether it's Fashion Week or whether it's Art Basel, or where do you guys see other inspiration? I know I sent you or you commented on my Carla Fernandez.
Oh yeah. The Mexico City-based designer. Yeah. She has a shop in La Roma, and I mean, Mexico City is amazing. And I have a dear friend and collaborator who lives there, who I've gotten to visit and work with. And then
nice.
She also got a grant from the School of the Art Institute to go to Oaxaca and study textiles there. So that informed one of my collections, because I tagged along. And the next collection I have, I'm debuting a piece from it next Friday at that private women's club. And,
what's the name of the private women's club?
The Friday Club. Friday, just
Friday.
like the day.
Friday.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. The Friday.
It's like
club.
today, but next Friday.
Exactly.
Right. Understood.
But yeah, so it's all using yarns from a collective there called Bidao in Teotitlán del Valle in Oaxaca, where weaving has existed since the beginning of time, and everybody in the town is a weaver. Have you been there?
Yeah.
Right?
And I went to the National Museum, and they showed like a bunch of different weaving mills and like all the different old textiles, like in the mud huts. Like they've been doing it for ever.
I mean, I remember asking my cab driver if he was a weaver, and he was just like scoffed at me. He was like, "Yeah, of course. Like, you know how to weave? Like, what are you, stupid?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm stupid.
Yeah.
Like everyone in this town weaves,
Yeah.
and drives a cab or whatever else you do." But Bidao is really interesting in that I love this kind of speaking of women, and that they were one of the first to really reclaim the process of natural dyeing. So of course, when aniline dyes came in, everybody was super excited about all these neons and black and the range and depth of color that you can get with synthetic dyeing. But also what happened is the river dried up and people started getting cancer, and the women in the village were really concerned about these issues like livestock dyeing and kind of connecting the dots. And I don't know enough environmentally to say if it was actually the synthetic dyes that were doing it, or just what's happened everywhere in the 20th and 21st centuries with the rise of mass manufacture and rise of cancer rates and pesticides and all the other toxins that we're now exposed to. But they just said like no more. So the women in the village were saying let's talk to the elders. There's still a few people left who remember the old ways of vegetable dyeing and using cochineal and things like that. And then the men were like, let's talk to these German chemical engineers that we know, and they're going to tell us like the secret sauce of dyeing. And the women were like, okay, fine, let's divide, and then we'll come back. And then actually there was this whole process of really having to fight to take the time away from the home and childcare and cooking to make that time to talk to the elders, and they really fought for it, but did it, and then kind of came together, the men and the women, to figure out like how to recapture these old recipes that were really kind of on the verge of being lost. So I just fell in love with some of the yarns and bought those, and then worked with the weaving mill here in Chicago to develop a line of textiles. It's now, like many things, it goes through twists and turns, and it was very hard to get the yarn into the country, and then it wasn't wound on the right kind of cones. And anytime you develop your own materials, especially me as a fashion designer and not a weaver, there's going to be some stumbling blocks. But the yarn's actually not going through the looms, so I might actually end up having it knitted or work with another mill. But Emily Winter was kind enough to hand weave some pieces, and so in some ways it's this happy accident that to see her hand weaving, where she can do things that the Dobby looms that they have cannot do, is just like, whoa.
I want to get her on and talk to her too. And
yes, you do.
We have
so
some
fascinating.
We have some totes like that we make through Wyzendale that I want to see if she can like produce and make. So that's great.
Yeah, I checked out your merch.
I know
liking that.
everybody.
I didn't know you had merch.
Yeah, we have a shirt, a double rubs shirt, which is just a play on the double rubs. That's in a baseball tee.
Weizenbeek.
Well, Martindale, Weizenbeek, and then we have a
NCIDQ. I know.
I haven't. Everybody's like, "Are you going to take the NCIDQ?" And I haven't.
You're like, no, I just have the Wyzendale podcast instead.
Right, exactly. And I don't know. And I don't know what this podcast turns into. I don't know what the merch turns into. It was an idea, and I wanted to get it out. So that's what everybody really struggles with.
I'm totally gonna get one.
It's just totally just getting it out for sure.
So into it. Yeah, that's great.
So the party last night, you said you DJ as well.
Yes,
Jamie, excuse me.
I do.
But how does that career kind of dovetail into what you're doing creatively as far as fashion?
Well, I love it when it does, and I think it does in subtle ways all the time, and then sometimes in these really overt ways. So I would say the most overt way is I do costuming for musicians and dancers, and that is my true joy. So I was lucky to get to work with Damon Locks, who's a dear friend of ours, and really I would say how we know each other. That's a real connector.
I wasn't sure if I needed to plug him any more than he gets plugged, but
who is he? I don't know.
He is a Chicago-based visual artist, musician, teaching artist. What am I missing? He's
social
a DJ.
Justice activist.
So, he teaches art at Stateville Maximum Security Prison, and one of our closest friends.
Your former roommate.
We go way back with him.
He worked at the record store.
His name one more time?
Damon Locks.
Damon Locks.
So he's recently received a ton of grants and really is getting the acknowledgement he deserves in the arts world. And so through one of those, he actually got tapped to do the RedBull Academy shows that happened last year. They're about to happen again. So
the concerts that they do. Yeah. Nice.
So we had a big budget to perform at Garfield Park Conservatory. So he was able to hire me to do costumes. So I costumed. The show had a lot of big parts to it. So the Move Me Soul Dancers, which is a dance troupe started by Aisha Jacko. That's kind of modern dance, African dance influences, and just kind of whatever they come up with. That's amazing and beautiful. And then 4 or 5 different musicians, and then 4 or 5 singers, a lot of whom are kind of graduates from the Chicago Children's Choir, but now adults. And so did different kind of pieces for each of those groups. Nice. And then I've also worked with Martine Whitehead, who I mentioned before, but for her pieces, she's got one that's coming out called Notes on Territory that's happening in a couple weeks. So I was able to do one piece for that.
When is the strongest, sorry not to cut you off, when is the strongest like fashion season, would you say? Is it more the fall, like when more of the layers come out? And
for Chicago, for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't follow the fashion season because I'm slow fashion. I've just kind of said, I don't working with the fashion system.
Okay.
I just can't do it. I don't believe in it. There's aspects of it that are great. There are people who are within that system who I respect highly, but it's gotten to this sort of crazy point where you have to have so much money to participate. It's kind of like being like a major label music. Yeah. If it happens to you and you're one of the lucky few, great, but also read that contract closely, hire a lawyer, so that you're not in debt to the company before you even released your record or what have you. It's very similar to that. It's really hard system in which to succeed, especially financially. And then you see even the most successful people who are like, chefs in the food world who are committing suicide. Like, it's something that just rips you apart. So it's not really something that I'm itching. It's not like, they're tapping me on the shoulder and being like, Jamie, you have to show at Fashion Week. Here's $1 million.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I'm pursuing aggressively because it doesn't feed the soul. And also you're constantly having to churn out new products so that you can sell. And really it's all about selling perfumes and handbags in the end, which is also like bizarre that that's how you make your money in this, or licensing. Which doesn't feel good.
You mentioned perfume. Talk about scents. What do you guys think about scents? Or how does that affect you guys as well?
We actually have a lot of thoughts about scents. And another collaborator of ours who's named Tanya Bueller, who also happens to be my DJ partner.
Local, obviously. Okay.
Yep. And so she developed a line of called German Girl Beard Oil. She worked at Murs Apothecary for years as their perfume buyer, and she's recently gone on her own, but she's run perfume workshops out of Department of Curiosities. She distills her own perfumer's alcohol with her father and her son.
Her dad's a chemist, isn't he?
He's an engineer and kind of a Renaissance man.
Okay.
He's actually worked as an auto mechanic, but also knows how to fix planes, and so
good with his hands.
Yeah, he swam to freedom from East Germany with his documents duct taped around him for hours.
Total
in the
side note.
60s.
Yesterday we were in this meeting and we were watching a video. Eve and I sat next to each other, and the woman in the video was like, "Oh, we don't like this guy Bob. He's too aggressive. He's hairy." And Eve leans over to me and she goes, "He actually sounds kind of hot." I was like, "Oh my god!"
Wait, I was talking about Harry Bob.
That
wasn't about Harry Bob.
I thought that was where the joke was. That's why I was laughing so hard.
Well, it was because context, please. First of all, I was joking that these work videos are C-level actors that never got a job.
It was bad.
And so, but she was talking about Bob, and he's hairy and he's fat, and then her boss found out that she never has actually seen Bob.
Right.
And so we assume now Bob is not hairy and fat. I'd
Correct.
like to clarify. And then I was just making a joke. And I was like, maybe Bob's really hot.
The timing of the joke went really well.
Yeah, she's got that comedic timing.
Yes.
See, I made a point to say that I've been a teacher for almost 20 years, and I'm a terrible student because I'm the person always passing notes under the desk and cracking jokes.
I'm always talking during class.
Yeah, so whatever bad reviews I've gotten from students over the years, I fully deserve.
Yeah,
because I was that student.
I mean, that is a thing now. Do you often Google yourself, or
so I don't know why
Glassdoor or whatever? I don't know.
Gotten on Rate My Professor.
Is that what that is? Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but we get evaluated every semester, and I have a stack a mile high of past evaluations, which they're interesting. I mean, I feel like the students who put in the most effort are the ones that are going to give me feedback that I want to learn from. The ones who, and you can sort of tell, even though they're anonymous.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, the question is where they ask, how much effort have you put in compared to everyone else in the class? And every single person in the class says more than everybody else.
Yeah.
So they all perceive themselves as working harder than everybody else, which is interesting to me because I'm like, this isn't going to affect your grade. It's anonymous. You could be honest.
Yeah.
But they all
perception's reality.
Either perceive themselves as the hardest worker, or they just can't get themselves to admit on paper that they didn't put in as much effort as other classmates. I usually get really favorable reviews from the students who work really hard. I've gotten some completely horrible ones over the years, but it's, proportionally, it's one or two compared to most people saying pretty good things. But last semester, I got the worst one I've ever gotten in my life from a student who literally said they want their money back. I was like, whoa.
I think that's the thing. I think reviews are, could be this wonderful process of, feedback. And of course, you should be asking that throughout the semester, I think, as a fellow teacher, not with nearly the experience that Eve has, but a few years under my belt, I'm always trying to like, tell me now because it's too late for you once it's, we're at the end of the semester. But of course, I'll like work that feedback into the next cycle. But I think now there's also this idea that it's this sort of like customer is always right perspective,
Yes.
or like something you can order online. Like, I don't like that project,
Right.
It's this, the culture has really shifted
Yep.
with that. And oftentimes, people won't talk to you directly. They just want to do like
That
an
was what was
anonymous
so
feedback
weird.
form. And I get like you could be worried about retribution, but lots of times I think it's also just that online culture of being able to anonymous be like, this video sucks. Or like one time
Keyboard warriors.
NPR did like a little thing on me, and somebody was like, her eyebrows are really hairy. And I was just like, I'm just a person. Yeah. And I was like, well, they are, but some people put chemicals on their eyebrows to make them hairy.
Your eyebrows are all the rage now.
Yeah, they go in and out of vogue, though.
You waited. You were patient.
Yeah.
What was interesting, because the studio where I got the one where someone said they wanted their money back, it was a very small studio, and everyone was incredibly pleasant to my face. So that was even creepier.
Yeah.
I thought if I had had some kind of conflict or had a
or
student
indication.
Right, because I am usually the person throughout the semester that I like it to be a little bit more collaborative, because I teach upper level design students. So I'll say, what do you guys think? How long do you think you need to build this model? And if they say 5 weeks, I'll be like, we'll split the difference between 3 days and 5 weeks, because that's what I thought it should take, and you're really stretching it out. And I'll say, but I also want you to be able to use the model for your project, so it doesn't make sense to push it all the way to the end, and they get it.
Right.
But I feel like, and I'm, a parent in the same way.
Yeah.
Get the other person's input. It's not just me as the overlord. I do have more knowledge than my students on that subject.
Yeah.
I have more knowledge than my kid on most subjects, but not all.
Right.
But I still think that people respond better when they're part of the equation, when their input is part of the decision. And I do value their input. It's their life. It's their project.
Right.
Or I will even say, like, I got this critique last semester about this project, so I made this shift. How do you guys feel about that? Or I'll even say, I'm starting a new project, so the one you heard about that everyone was excited about is not what we're going to do. But here's why.
Yeah.
And this one's even better.
Yeah.
But if you have any things that you were expecting to get out of this class that you are concerned you might not get from this project, let me know. I mean, they're usually not inclined to say.
Yeah, because they don't know what they don't know, too, sometimes. And, it's tough being a teacher as well, because you have other teachers, and that they're affecting the students' workload as well.
Yes.
And so it's a for the parent analogy, you don't know what mom or dad is telling them in the other room.
Right.
You're trying to direct them the best way you can.
Right.
Going back to the scents thing. So so she makes scents and sells them locally as well? Or do you have them in the shop, or?
Not at this point. That might happen, but she runs workshops where she's talking a bit about the history of scent, and just how scent operates physiologically, kind of what a base note is versus a heart versus a top note, and then introducing you to that sensory experience. So guests will put on one of our eye masks, and it's just so that you're just trying to focus in on your olfactory sense. And also just that kind of phenomenon of how connected scent is to memory, and how if you've never smelled something before, your brain just kind of goes a little crazy, and it's this really cool phenomenon. I mean, it happens, I think, when we taste something for the first time too, but that's a little bit harder to achieve. Yeah.
I do have new taste memories. Yeah.
Wow, nice.
But I think it's interesting that you ask about scent, because no one really brings that up when they're talking about interior design or even fashion.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an important part. I mean, we sat on that leather couch earlier, and the smell was part of the thing that made it feel so good, feel so luxe, right?
Yeah.
And in interior design, it's a huge component.
Absolutely.
I mean, we talk about VOCs being bad. Although I joke with my students when I take them on tours of fabrication facilities, I'm like, smell the VOCs.
Yeah.
Love being in the shop.
Yeah.
It just that
The work going on.
all the stuff
Yeah.
makes me happy. That's my happy place.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it adds to the brand too. It adds to the brand that you're experiencing, whether it's clean, crisp, or just like you said, a working factory, sawdust, fresh grass cut,
Right.
That's something that obviously triggers memories for me, like back in childhood and stuff. But yeah, I don't know too many local perfumeries, if I can call them that. But yeah, that's why I was curious as far as what you guys thought, as far as locally, kind of what's going on, or what are your favorite scents for you guys?
If I told you, I'd have to kill you.
Yeah, this is true. People are so protective of their scent
I'll tell you about
too.
mine. Nobody likes mine, so it's, I love
protective
mine's
of
like on
mine.
sale all the time.
I'm protective of mine because I get a lot of
them.
comments, positive
Really?
comments. I've had all kinds of interesting comments, like
Nice.
a total stranger. I was sitting at a bar waiting for someone, and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm not trying to pick you up, but you smell better
Damn, you
than
smell
anyone
good."
I've ever smelled." And I was like, "Thank you. That I can take that, and that's not weird." Or I had someone I was working for recently tell me that he always knew when I was in the building, and I don't think I overscent. I think it's just a thing that's like just a specific
Yeah,
scent. But yes,
that's interesting.
Again, I like
secret.
weird scents, so I'm not. Also, scents smell differently on every body,
do.
so
They
it's
do.
all about your pH. So I'm like, But I like the one that I like has this really heavy black licorice overtone, so it's really divisive, and most people don't like it. And I'm like, why do I pick a scent that most people? What does that say
Yeah,
about me?
right.
But I just love it, and I hate flowery scents. I hate typical scents. So this one's called Black Vines, and it's by Kerosene. So it's a perfumer out of Detroit, which is cool. And I guess I don't know, he had
the whole
something
thing
to do
about
with
that is so badass. Are you kidding me?
yeah, something to do with motorcycles,
Yeah.
and so like
What's the name of it again?
Kerosene.
Kerosene?
So
Okay.
his bottles
Pours
are like
oil on herself.
Yeah, right.
set it on
Light me
fire.
on fire.
But so the bottles are, I think he uses like motorcycle, like automotive paint, and then it's just like a stamped piece of metal, like brass or something, like real low tech. And it's just this kind of clovey scent. But yeah, like I looked it up. I was like, I'm gonna buy another bottle. And it was like online people were like, this is disgusting. I hate it.
Yeah.
Worst scent ever.
Yeah.
I was like,
Only for people with hairy eyebrows.
I was just gonna say that.
totally.
Well, we're the same
I'm an
person.
acquired
so
Yeah,
taste.
there you
right,
go.
right. So do you guys frequent a lot with Detroit or Michigan neighbors, or like I know you? Yeah.
So I just did a trunk show at a shop called Orleans and Winder, which is, it was great to be in there because they carry like the whole Guidi shoe line and all kinds of designers who show in Paris. So it was really nice to be included in that mix.
Yeah.
And
They just had their design month in September or something. Is that when you showed?
that's
or?
when I was there, but
Oh, okay, cool.
unfortunately I was working the whole time, so I couldn't go. But then also, the history of, house and techno music
Yeah.
and that connection between Chicago and Detroit,
Yeah.
and all that history is really rich. And
Do you go to
Movement
Movement a lot,
Festival.
or Tech Fest, or whatever it's called?
I think it's called Movement now.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, because usually like Mole de Mayo is the same weekend, and so I got to DJ that last year. But I have friends who do parties there, and it's just, it's nice that Detroit is known like all over the world for design, its automotive history, and its musical history, and of course like soul music and Motown, and all of that is so important and beautiful. And so it was really fun to go back. I hadn't been back in like 10 years. No, it had been just a couple years, but it is changing really rapidly. It's some ways for the better, in some ways I don't know, it's not my place to say.
Yeah.
But
It's interesting to see when I go back. Like,
are you from there?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why am I talking about Detroit?
Yeah, no.
She said good things about it.
Yeah,
See,
no,
I'm from St. Louis, so I feel like there's like a
Okay.
kinship. I mean, Detroit rose much higher and fell much further, but
Sure.
there's still when people are like, don't go to, like a couple years ago, people would still say this, like,
Yeah.
you can't stop at the stoplights. And, and I went and there was like tumbleweed going down the road. I'm like, where am I in the Wild West?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it
it's
felt
Well,
like
still
St.
some
Louis.
areas,
Steam
obviously.
emanates from the streets. Does it
Yeah.
still?
The what?
Where like steam just emanates from the
yeah.
streets.
There's still steam. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
What part did
though.
you
I
grow
love
up in?
So I grew up on Verner, Michigan, so
Okay.
like Southwest, and then my family moved over to Telegraph and Joy Road.
Okay.
And then I moved out here for Harrington. So I went to Harrington And
Yeah.
then my family moved out of Detroit. So,
Okay.
so that's my home. Whenever I go home, I go out downtown, take a look at Detroit is the New
Downtown
Black.
is so fancy now.
The Good Neighbors, also another shop that I really like down there as far as for fashion. And then checked out Shinola, and I went to an all boys Catholic high school, but there's a girl who went to our sister high school, Kate Williams, excuse me. She's a chef, and she has some good shops down there. Lady of the House. I don't know if you've ever been to that restaurant. Or Carl's is her new one that she opened up in the Siren Hotel. So yeah, I mean they're doing things
That is
down
so
there.
great.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
It's so
great
cool.
to. I mean, they're definitely doing some stuff for sure. So I'm glad to hear that you guys,
Well, and
frequent
for
there
me,
and-
Cranbrook. So
yeah. Okay.
I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't go there, but I love it, and I've visited many times, and I have a lot of friends and colleagues who went there and have taught there, and
Yeah.
it's just also just being a huge Saarinen family fan.
Yeah. Yeah, and they won a design award this year for their hotel, like a hospitality award or something like that. So I think that's always interesting. And we're going down to Basel in a few weeks and going to check
Nice.
out all their new hotels that they won as well for the awards. So yeah, I think it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like wherever you find inspiration, you can. It's everywhere you go. So
Yeah.
Do you go to Milan a lot? Do you guys go to Milan a lot
I've
at all?
been
or?
before, but I mean, I don't know. When I was 20, so it's
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was
I
just
don't
curious
really
as far as fashion or as far as
No.
how do you guys gauge that?
So for me, like, because you were asking that question earlier, I mean, really the only way I participate in that system is going to Premier Vision to buy fabrics, and I actually go to the New York version. The bigger version is in Paris, but I mean, it would be lovely to go to Paris, but
Yeah. Premier
budget
Vision?
so it's where the higher end mills show their fashion textiles, and so that's been really great because
When is that show usually?
There's one in July and one in February.
Okay.
And again, it's a smaller kind of like satellite show in New York, but it is the place where you can find the most high end textiles at a trade show in the U.S.
So
and
like Agenda, or there's also one in Vegas called
Magic.
Magic, yeah. So that's more tailored towards like the fast fashion, I guess.
Yeah,
or-
Magic is like 100,000 yards is going to be like your opener, and it's going to be mostly Chinese mills. So
Okay.
you have to order massive quantities. It's not to say that there aren't nice things there, but just it's for mass market. Whereas Premier Vision, there's a lot of companies that will let you start with one roll, like 50 meters or what have
Oh,
you.
wow.
And it's a lot more focused on kind of innovation. So a lot of Japanese and Korean mills that are doing really interesting things technologically, also with sustainability. A lot of great like
A lot of
leather
denim,
tanneries,
salvage denim and stuff.
like that for sure, for
Yeah.
that kind of like heirloom market. So that's inspirational for sure. And then of course like just New York in general, and even just going to a city that has a garment district is nice. I mean, a dwindling one, but you're just being around other people who like are part of your craft is great, and being able to walk in and see like 8,000 different selections of buttons,
It's
off
gorgeous.
on the street, like, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And why is it? I mean, obviously, I know the males don't value not that they don't value fashion, they just don't purchase things.
You
or-
tell us that, male in the room.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm in an Adidas jumpsuit, so I don't know.
I would argue with you about that. I think that men actually often value their clothing more than women. They just have less of it. And so for that reason, especially because, depending on your job, a lot of men have to buy a suit or a few suits or suit jackets.
Yeah.
So those are pieces that they're hopefully going to have for 5-10 years, maybe more.
Right.
You alter them if you gain or lose weight, and you're not ashamed to be seen at the same wedding in the same suit.
Sure,
Like, God forbid,
sure.
maybe you change up your tie. So I think that men have this, and I also find like real excitement if you put effort into the piece and give interesting details, like a cool contrasting lining or really nice finishes. And I think for women, there's a segment of the market who really appreciates that, because we don't get that, or like, oh my gosh, you gave me a pocket. Wow.
Yeah.
I feel so special. But
It's true.
we're also so primed for constant novelty.
Yeah.
Our bodies change a lot. So it's hard to sell sometimes those more higher end pieces to the average woman. You know.
And what about the changing? Just want to get your thoughts quickly on that, like Rent a Runway and things like that. Like those are definitely game changers as far as fashion. I think it's just because it opens up the door to so many more pieces that people aren't really have access to. So I don't know, how do you guys see that changing the industry?
For me, I mostly positively. I don't participate in it. I think it's it's part of this like sharing economy that I'm slower to adopt. Probably just I'm almost a millennial, but not quite. So I think, at first when they came out with like Uber, I'd be like, who's going to get into a stranger's car? And of course, now I'm like,
Everyone.
I'll just get into some, I don't even know if this is the right car. I'm just going to jump in. Are you, Carl? No? Okay. Well, you want to take me to Logan Square? Like, how quickly things change and Airbnb and that kind of thing. But it's still sort of like, I think I really have a personal relationship to clothing. Yeah. Like I don't mind being seen in the same thing over and over again. But I think it is better for the environment. It also makes fashion more accessible. So I really like that. I don't like that it's still kind of playing to that like Instagrammable novelty thing that instead of that you always have to be seen in something new. But of course you don't have to use it that way. It's the same way that I think like it would be great if we were less dependent on cars, and you could argue like, well, Uber like makes you more dependent. No, like it's still better for the environment. It allows people to have less cars or not drink and drive, or overall I do think it's a positive thing.
And I think the younger people, I say younger, but thrifting is having like a huge revitalization.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah,
that was the foundation of my teenagehood and beyond.
Just reusing, and now people are experimenting on those things, whether it's screen printing or mixing matching sleeves.
That's very cool.
I think that's interesting to see as well.
Totally. And I remember when we were thrifting, people were like, that's dead people's clothes, that's gross, or those are used, or those are old. And we were like, no, is this gold mine? And I mean, yes, it's also those things, but you wash it and you make it your own. But
unless you were a little too excited to wear it, and then you're like, I'll wash it next time.
They didn't have Febreze back then. But
hot water.
Scabies. Yeah. But I do have to say, like, now thrifting for me is more like, it's kind of like, I don't want to be a downer, but it's a lot of like Old Navy and H&M.
It's not the same.
Because it's all stuff from the 90s.
When I was in high school, it was all stuff from the 50s and 60s that I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
And it's not just a period thing. It's that the quality was so much better. And now you're getting like dead stock Target
the styles then. Yeah.
Does it change, obviously, where the thrift store is located? Do you guys strategically maybe do that?
Yeah, there's definitely like, if it... was like if there's an older clientele in the area, you might get older eras, which I like better, or higher quality, and also certainly
I like the stores that focus on older undead Jewish people.
I'm a fan of the ARC. Yeah. Let's just
come out and say it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Jewish people. Gotcha.
Old and dead Jewish people.
Yeah.
They are my ancestors, so I can say
that.
This
is true. That's true. So what, in closing, what do you guys, anything you guys want to promote or let people know for the million of listeners that I have? So. Any shows or anything?
I don't need to be promoting anything at the
moment. Where can they find you?
You got a real job now.
Where can they find you? Any social?
So my Instagram is Eve Fineman, all one word.
Is that two N's?
It's just Fineman.
Fineman.
It's as simple as it can be.
Gotcha.
I do have some of my own work on there, furniture that I've designed, interiors I've done. So yes, I have a quote unquote real job, and I also have had my own practice going for over 15 years. That's involved a lot of collaboration and had multiple incarnations. And I also do a lot of architectural photography, so I actually use Instagram as a photography medium.
Would you say that's curated?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
it is
good.
curated. I don't have fuzzy, ugly snapshots of my dog or baby on there. I don't have a dog or a baby, but if I did, they still wouldn't be on there.
Good.
I think that's important.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Jamie, for you?
So I'm going to do a little trunk show at my friend's studio, Anna Brown. That's in Pilsen. I believe it's 1907 South Racine, right around there.
Okay.
If you just go
it's not on
south
Halsted?
of, no, it's on Racine.
Oh, okay.
So if you go south of 19th Street, you'll see it on the east side of the street. It's a beautiful studio space, and that's going to be November 16th and 17th. So her work will also be available. I adore her work. She's also a member of the League of Women Designers.
That's a Thursday?
It's a Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's kind of my next thing coming up, and then she and I are also sharing a booth at the One of a Kind show here at the Merchandise Mart. It's on the 7th floor, and it's the first Thursday through Sunday of December, so I think that's like the 5th through the 8th. Yeah. And we are booth, I don't know if I can remember off the top of my head. I want to say 50, 67, something like that, but it's Archipelago, so we can be found through that. And yeah, my Instagram is Production Mode. My DJ Instagram is Party Line on Vinyl.
Party Line on Vinyl, nice. Do you have SoundCloud or anything? Or do you put
Mixcloud.
your mixes on? Okay.
That's Miss Hayes, Hazee.
Nice. Why did you choose Mixcloud as opposed to SoundCloud?
I prefer it more as a listener because it's more like DJ mix oriented, and I think SoundCloud is more about, to me, producers and remixes. Okay. And while I enjoy those things and incorporate them into my sets, it's still, I'm more selector style. It's more about the juxtaposition of the records, of the arc that you're taking, and I'm interested in so many different genres. And then once you're following somebody, you can see all of the lists they post, all their favorites. So I just find the interface more fun. So I just never bothered to do SoundCloud. That once I put out that first production, just watch out SoundCloud. Yeah, right.
How often do you DJ?
Probably 3 times a week. Okay. 2 to 3 times a week. It depends.
Same spot or?
I have a couple residencies, so I just did one last night at the Hungry Brain. That's kind of my most favorite, rawest, purest, authentic. It's called Eclectech, and it's with 3 other DJs, Tanya Bueller, Boomback Joe, and Tim McNulty. And then we have a guy on visuals. It's Color Swim, or Ronan Goldstein.
Great name, Color Swim.
Color Swim. His stuff is great. Yeah. And
are these late night parties? Are they
this is
after
10,
work crowd?
10 to 2.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Then I have a residency at tonight at Asterio. That's 10 to 2. It's every second Friday. I have one at Booze Box. That's the second Tuesday of the month, though not this one.
That's in the West Loop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then I DJ at a lot of other spots, but not with residency. So those happen. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you again, ladies, for coming on. I appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have you guys on again. Textile Week, you guys had a date, right? Did you guys set the
Yes,
dates?
I believe it's the first week of October, thereabouts. Yeah, whatever, like that first, I think it's a Monday through Sunday, sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you. Cheers again, and appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Your safety is important. If you observe unattended packages, vandalism, or suspicious activity, inform CTA personnel immediately.